learned yet that the murderer knew that, but I was in some way thankful that it was that day, because I was able to go to a Unity Havdalah that night and be with our Jewish brothers and sisters and feel that unity that we're going to talk about a little bit more in terms of the response to this, not just about the history of anti-Semitism and why we are at where we are today and why anti-Semitism is such a unique hatred, but about our response to it. So, all Jews must die. That's what the evil murderer this past Shabbat said. He said all Jews must die. He didn't say Orthodox Jews. He didn't say Reform Jews, conservative or Reconstructionist. He didn't say right-wing or left-wing Jews. He didn't say liberal Jews, conservative Jews, Democrat Jews, Republican Jews, Likud Jews, Meretz Jews, settler, or kibbutznik. He just said all Jews. Not young, not old, not Ashkenazi, not Sfaradi, all Jews. Just like every single anti-Semitic, Jew-hating persecutor of our people before. He did not identify us by any type or group. He just identified us as Jews. They never, ever care about the differences that we focus on so much, that we argue about so much. They just focus on one thing. We're Jews. We need to remember this. When we think about our response to that terrible tragedy, and I hate saying tragedy because tragedy makes it sound like it's a hurricane. When we think about our response to this horrible massacre, we need to remember that unity. That no anti-Semite, no matter what the ideological origin of their anti-Semitism, ultimately cares about these differences. They just care about the fact that we're Jews. We are all Jews. It could have been any of us. We need to remember that. And we should act that way, and we should strive every day to live that unity. So as the rabbi said, it's 2018. It's more than 150 years since Ulysses S. Grant's infamous General Order 11, where he ordered all the Jews in his military district of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi to be forced out of their homes and forced out of the territory. It's 100 years almost to the day from when Leo Frank was lynched in an anti-Semitic hate crime in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's 75 years after a third of our people were exterminated in under 4 years during the Holocaust. And yet, this past week, we all are witness to 11 of our brothers and sisters being murdered for being Jewish. And while it's hard to contemplate that, we need to remember that this is sadly not the first time in recent memory that an anti-Semitic, Jew-hating attack was perpetrated on Jews in America. Again, in recent memory. Attacks on Jewish institutions in America are sadly not as new or recent as we think. Between 1998 and 2014, we had a shooting at a JCC in LA, a shooting at an El Al counter at LAX, a shooting at the Jewish Federation in Seattle, shooting at the Holocaust Museum, and another shooting at another JCC in Overland Park, Kansas, and also a plan to bomb a major show in Manhattan in 2011 that was thankfully thwarted by the FBI. Now, it's true that the death toll this past week in Pittsburgh was the worst, but that's not because the prior anti-Semites and Jew haters that between 1998 and 2014 engaged in all the attacks I just mentioned didn't want to kill 11 or more Jews. In fact, they wanted to kill dozens, if not hundreds, of Jews in those attacks. They just weren't successful. One of my biggest gripes as an Israeli often is that the Israeli government focuses on the results. If an attack fails, then they don't do that much in response to the attack. If the attack is horribly successful, then there's more action. To me, that's too late. And I don't want to insult anybody here, but our community's response to a 1998 shooting on a JCC just north of us in LA, our response to the attack in Overland Park, our response to the attack on the Holocaust Museum, our response to a plot to blow up a synagogue in Manhattan where hundreds of Jews were going to be there that day, is too late. We need to respond to the intent, not just to the result. To all of those who think that this horrible anti-Semite and his acts just sprang in the last year or two, I want you to understand something. We are 1.5% of the United States. That's it. As Rabbi Wright said, we're amazingly impactful in many positive ways, way beyond our numbers in this country. But we are 1.5% of the Jew people in the United States. Since 2010, we have accounted for anywhere from 55% to 65% of the faith-based hate crimes in this country. You may think from the media that anti-Muslim attacks are the dominant force or the dominant type of faith-based hate crimes in this country. It's not even remotely close. Sadly, even though our populations are about the same, anti-Muslim hate crimes, which are heinous and should never happen, generally account for 10 to 17% of the faith-based hate crimes in this country. Again, in 2010, 8 years ago, we were over 65% of the faith-based hate crimes in this country. So what is it about anti-Semitism that makes it this powerful force? Something that has led, as Rabbi Wright said, to us being the perennial other, whether we are in Arab lands, European lands, and sadly even at times in this great land, a land where the promise by George Washington of us forever being a welcome member of the community was made so famously on the independence of this country. What is it about anti-Semitism that is so different, that makes it so powerful? As Rabbi Wright said, it started out as a religious-based other, the universalist expression of Christianity and Islam both, where they both believed that we rejected their faiths and that their faiths were the only path to salvation, led initially, and obviously for a very long time, to our persecuted status in those lands, be they European-controlled or Arab-controlled lands. But anti-Semitism, because of the mysticism of European culture in large part, and the appeal of conspiracy theories in those cultures, Anti-Semitism today is a unique form of bigotry and hatred because it is a conspiracy-based bigotry and hatred. While all forms of racism share a common ancestor in xenophobia, anti-Semitism is different. It isn't just the hate of the other. It isn't just the xenophobia and intolerance towards another group. Because while most forms of racism and most racists hate or describe the object of their hate as some form of inferior person, some type of other that in some material way they view as being less good than how they view themselves and the people in their in-group, the anti-Semite is animated by something else too. He's animated by a hatred and obsession with Jews that is both as a subhuman, but even more nefariously as an anti-human. To the anti-Semite, Jews are uniquely evil. Not just inferior, but evil. To the anti-Semite, Jews as individuals or as a nation engage in vile practices that they view no society can tolerate. It's why Bowers last Saturday yelled through the social media, "I'm going in." He viewed himself as a defender of his people against a unique evil. He didn't view himself as engaging in evil. He views himself as fighting evil. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theory relies on a belief that Jews exercise an almost supernatural power or control over society. Or, in the case of the hate for Israel, over the international community. Societies and international communities that because of Jewish conspiracies are forced to suffer our existence and our meddling in what they view as the right way for things to be. So because of this, anti-Semitism doesn't stop at segregation or exploitation the way normal racism does. It's a unique hatred, and because of it, the Jew is viewed as a cosmic or universally evil and powerful oppressor who the hater feels he must resist. I don't know how many of you, or if any of you, other than Rabbi Wright, were with me a few weeks ago at the Stand With Us Gala, but we hosted and had as our principal speaker at the Stand With Us Gala a remarkable young man named Hussein Abu Bakr. Hussein Abu Bakr was born in Cairo, raised in Cairo, and he talked about the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred that is the stew, essentially, in which he was raised. He talked about how in Egyptian society, which by the way it's worth noting, this is one of the only two Arab countries that Israel has a peace deal with. And Hussein Abu Bakr is 29 years old today. So he's never known an existence without an Egypt at peace with Israel. But yet, despite that, he was raised in a society where his parents, his teachers, his media, his TV, his mosque, all taught him that Jews were not only bad, inferior, but uniquely evil, conspiring to do all kinds of terrible things to the world and to his people in particular. He said that he grew up as a child viewing Jews as a type of Lord Voldemort character. And he said it was uniquely appealing, because just like kids in Harry Potter novels and in movies embrace the idea of this evil Lord Voldemort, and it attracts them to the idea of how they're going to fight this evil. Hussein Abu Bakr described how that unique evil of the Jew was something that he was eager to fight. It was only when this remarkable young man taught himself Hebrew, because he said he wanted to learn the devil's language. That's how he described it. He taught himself Hebrew at age 14.